Hi, this is the OG art teacher, and today I am going to show you how to make a circle turn into a sphere using a light source and um, shading techniques with a dry material. Um, so, pencil, favorite pencil is Ticonderoga. Um, you can use any brand of pencil that you want to. You can use a colored pencil. You could use a crayon. Um, Pretty much anything that's not in liquid form. So first, you're going to go ahead and draw 3 circles. And if you saw my previous videos that were about practicing drawing circles, that will help you. I'm going to make them getting a little smaller. And so we now have 3 circles. Give each circle a light source. So I usually like to draw like a light bulb or a flashlight or something. You don't have to get that fancy. You can just draw a circle if you want, as long as you have some directional arrows coming out that show what direction your light is gonna be going in. So for this one, we're gonna do different light sources for each circle so that you can see how the angles affect the shading. Alright, so for the first one, I'm going to try zooming in on this. For the first one, our brightest spot is going to be at the top because it is closest to the light source. The circle, or when it is a sphere, is going to block light from hitting the ground directly below it. So you might draw a very light ellipse that you can erase where it crosses over the body of the circle. And at the very bottom, closest to the circle, you're going to have the darkest amount of value, which means you're going to push down harder with your drawing tool. The goal with shading is to try to get that line, this line, to disappear into your shading. So from here, I'm just going to kind of like do a circular kind of situation and let it extend where I drew the line, because you don't really want the line to be there. My suggestion is to always clean up with an eraser, because it brings me a lot of pleasure to do so. So I'm going to do that shadow, and then I'm going to go in with my eraser, my thick, let's see, High Polymer Pentel is a really good eraser brand. It can be kind of annoying if you have a bad eraser. Usually those pink erasers aren't very helpful, but you can use anything that you have at your disposal to create your artwork. So don't feel like you have to have certain materials. I'm going to use my finger to do my blending today, even though it's kind of frowned upon in certain parts of the artistic community, but I always have a finger. I don't always have a fancy, snobby blending stick. So you can wrap up a piece of construction paper or maybe a paper towel, like you could wrap it around the end of a pencil, not the lead end, and create your own blending stick that way. But finger works just as well. So I'm going to turn my paper so that it's easier for me to point the tip of the pencil at where it's going to be darkest. And there's also going to be a reflection from the table, which we should make this into a table, onto your sphere. So to make a table, or to make a surface for your spheres / circles to sit upon, you can either connect each circle to the one next to it, imagining that there's a line behind it. Or you can use a straight edge, which I made in an earlier demonstration, where you fold paper in half and then fold it in half again. And then on your circles, line it up where you want your table to go. Mine's a little off because I did it by hand, which I prefer. And basically, you would connect to the side of the paper, skip over the body of the circle, draw a connecting line, skip over the circle, draw another connecting line, skip over the circle, and end with the side of the paper. Then you'll have a table. My table looks a little, off, but this is for beginning artists, and I like to be imperfect about the way that I do things because it makes me feel better. Alright, so I'm going to turn the paper so that it's easier for me to use the tip of the pencil toward the darker area. I'm going to leave a little bit of, like light or white paper below for the reflection that would come off the table from the light bouncing. And then when you're shading in a curved motion, kind of going around in the circle, I think it's called contour shading, where you shade in the shape of the object that you're shading. I will use the last circle to show you what it looks like when you just shade straight up and down. So using that pencil to get a nice fade, I usually go in and we'll do a light coat of whatever material I'm using, and then I will try to make the lines disappear more by pushing down harder toward the bottom. And again, the tip of the pencil should always be pointed toward the darkest part of whatever you're shading, because it leaves a natural line and it helps just make things easier. What you don't want is a line right here to show where your shading quote starts. And the way that you can deal with that is either with your excellent shading skills or by covering the whole thing. I'm going to color. I'm having a little bit of trouble because my pencil needs maybe some sharpening. And then going back in and erasing. And I kind of like to erase some kind of curves so that it's more obvious that it's supposed to be 3D curvature, etc. And then erase the edges. If you want, you can even erase the top. Your brain will do a natural connection, or if you drew hard like I did, you'll have the ghost of a line still there. So you can always go in and make it more better looking. And again, using my finger to blend and going back in, that highlight. So for this one, the highlight is going to be closest again to the light source. And the light source is going to be blocked by this object. So we're going to have our cast shadow directly across. And this time I'm going to start with the shading of the circle into a sphere, and I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Oops. Yes. Okay. So pointing my pencil, the tip of my pencil, to the darkest part of the sphere, which would be directly opposite of your light source. So it'll be kind of more like this. And I'm coloring or shading. Coloring and shading are similar to me. Coloring is just the action of putting material on the paper. I guess gray gray is a value, but it's still coloring. So that circular motion is going to help it make it not look flat. Even if you put a fade on a circle, if you do it straight across, it's going to look flat no matter what. So I left a little bit of a spot for a highlight. I'm going to go back in, and now up next to the line of my circle, I'm going to add that dark shading. I'm coloring in a circular-ish motion. And as I move away from the base of the circle or sphere, I am getting less of a shadow. So there's always going to be like a kind of light shadow on the sides. The downside to blending with my finger is that the joints of my finger eventually kind of start hurting. So if you're someone that has like joint pain, you might want to invest in some blending sticks. A blending stick is really going to finish it out for you. And when you're using the blending stick, you should continue coloring in the contour motion, which is just basically means you're coloring the shape in that same motion. So really, you could probably color like in a circular way, but I'm not gonna do that right now. Or I guess I just did, but so then erase out your highlight, clean up around your edges. That will make it look sharper. And if you have to erase a little bit of your table to do so, that's okay. You can always reconnect the line. Make sure that the line doesn't go past the object or through the object. It will make the object look like it is clear, which might be something that you're going for. And if you wanted to add like a, the highlight effect to make it look more like a piece of glass, you might do that and have the thing go across, but it's just, fun. So on this one, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you color straight across. So again, lightest closest to the light source, darkest further away from the light source. I'm going to overlap a bit so that I can clean it up, but I am coloring straight across, doing a fade. So it's still, it'll look halfway decent, but it will not look three-dimensional, even if you use a blending stick on it. So I am erasing out the messy edges to make it look cleaner and more circular or spherical. Connecting the table lines. This one would have its shadow overlapping the shadow, the other one next to it. And it does have kind of a curvy look to it, but it mostly just looks like a flat circle with a fade on it. So if I did the highlight on it, straight across, that would be okay, but more quote-unquote incorrect, even though I don't really believe in doing art incorrectly. So contour, coloring, shading, and light sources. So a light source can be the way that the angle of a sun. So like this would be the sun at noon. This would be the sun as it is sinking and rising. I don't know which would be which, but if you had for example, like a rock from like this angle. Let's do it like this. So the sun's right here. The rock would be like that. Might have more shadow over here. There will be shadow underneath any kind of like little spots that it has. A rock that's directly below would have a small shadow right below it, and any kind of little divots would get some shading, and it might even get some shading at the bottom of it. So this one's sort of straight above as well, and we'll do this one with a rock over here. Most of the shading would be on the side of the rock that's furthest from the sun. You'd still have some underneath, but it would cast more of a shadow in that direction, and anything that was sticking out would get some shading. So, like, from this sun onto this rock, you would have shading on the opposite side, and it would cast a shadow over here. So if you learn the angle of like where the light's going to hit an object, starting to draw stuff in 3D will become a lot easier.